So I just finished talking with Meera, who is our trusty Prague expert, about her home in the fairy tale capital of the Czech Republic. She told me all about the must-see sights like Prague Castle and the Charles Bridge, what to order at restaurants and bars, some very interesting cultural etiquette tips, and so much more. And you'll recognize in the first few seconds that Meera really knows her stuff about Prague. So if you haven't already added Prague to your European bucket list, you will after hearing what Meera has to say today. Here's a 30-second teaser of the episode.
Prague is one of the safest cities I've been to, and it consistently ranks among safest cities for tourists in the world. It has this reputation of being really cold and really dark, but you're going to get here and you're going to be absolutely stunned at how colorful and lively and energetic the atmosphere is. You'll always find a street or an alley that's not featured on any guide. There's always surprises. If you want a really authentic Czech dish to check off, then it's called svičkova. So it's basically like Thanksgiving on a plate.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Travel Lemming podcast, where we talk about the world's best destinations with local experts. I'm your host, Betty Hurd. I'm a senior travel writer here at Travel Lemming, as well as a podcaster, obviously, and a full-time flight attendant based in Los Angeles. So before we talk Prague, don't forget to hit pause, like, and subscribe, and leave us a 5-star rating. It helps others find the show, which in turn helps us. So we really appreciate you taking the time to do that. Joining me is our Prague expert, a brand new writer here at Travel Lemming, who's crafted some incredible guides to the Czech Republic on our website. So please welcome to the show, Meera Devota.
Hey, Betty. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. It's so great to have you here, Meera. Welcome to the Travel Lemming team and to the Travel Lemming podcast. Now, I know you're not native to Prague, so tell our listeners a little bit more about yourself and what makes you our trustworthy Prague expert today.
Absolutely. So I'm actually originally from Hockessin, Delaware, which I don't really expect anyone to be able to point to on a map. It's a super tiny town in a really small state. So I wasn't really exposed to a ton of diversity growing up or a lot of different cultures, but just growing up in an immigrant family and traveling back and forth between my parents' home country, travel just became a really normal part of my life and just really fueled my motivation to want to live abroad. So after I spent a few years living in Madrid, in Spain, after I graduated from university back home, I then made the transition over to Prague. So that was around 3 years ago. And I've been living in Prague ever since. And it has just completely blown me away. I think I had a really, I don't know, when I first thought about the city and moving here after being in Madrid, which is really known to be a very lively and colorful city, I was like, oh gosh, it's going to be really dark. It's going to be really gray and gloomy. And it's just going to be like winter year round was my concept of the city in my head. And it has just been the opposite. I'm totally in love with the city. I never expected to enjoy it as much as I do and to discover so many new things about the culture and the people. So I'm excited to, jump into that a little bit later in the podcast. But yeah, ever since I moved here, we've hosted friends and family and friends of family and really, the entire gamut of visitors. So we've had my friends who have young children and my parents, and people are here to party and other people are here to do the museums and the history tours. So I think all of those experiences and then my general very type A personality of needing to know everything that's going on all the time has really helped me gain a really in-depth familiarity with the city. So I'm excited to share that.
That's awesome. So you've clearly already been the Prague guide for so many other people before. And now it's so awesome that you get to do the same for Travel Lemming readers, which listeners, by the way, make sure to check out all of Meera's articles. She only has a few since she's so new, but she's got some awesome pieces on the Czech Republic and Prague on travellemming.com. So make sure to look at those after the episode. So to start, can you paint a picture of how Prague is laid out on a map?
So the city is laid out really easily and it makes it super accessible for visitors, especially if you're coming for a short time. Even though it's, a large capital city, it's really easily done in a couple of days because of how it's laid out. So the entire city is split into two by the Vltava River. The river runs right through it. It's really the heart of the city in terms of it's lined with bars and there's farmers markets every weekend. And during the summer, there's always concerts that are happening around the river. So if you're ever in doubt of where to go, just to the river. But the center of the city is broken into the two historic neighborhoods. So that's the Old Town and then the Lesser Town. And both of those neighborhoods are kind of, iconic Prague, really medieval architecture, super well preserved. They have all of the main attractions, bars, restaurants, tons of accommodation. And then from there, you'll be in walking distance of pretty much anything you would want to see throughout your trip or be easily connected through the public transportation system. But around those neighborhoods are a few other main neighborhoods like, Hardy, which I can talk about a little bit later, Karlin, Polsevice, all of these like more local neighborhoods surround the historic center. Highly recommend like exploring them if you have the time, but mainly you'll be in the old town and the lesser town while you're here.
Great to know. Well, thank you so much for painting a picture of that. Definitely mentioned a lot of things that we're going to get into more detail on in the episode as well. So, to start, what are the best things to do in Prague?
So this is actually really hard because I think the best thing about Prague is that no matter what kind of traveler you are, you could pack an entire itinerary of whatever you're looking for. Museums, bars at clubs, restaurants, just architecture. Like it's really, really easy. But if I have to pick like my main three that I think speak to everyone, my first would be sunrise at the Charles Bridge, which if you Google, any Prague guide, or my Prague guide, hopefully. It's like the first thing on the list is like going to the Charles Bridge. It's one of the most iconic landmarks of the city, and it is absolutely stunning. But at the same time, because it is number one on everyone's list, it's always packed, and you are like fighting your way through hundreds of people, shoulder to shoulder. Can be a very uncomfortable experience. So even though it's a bit of a hard sell because it's not necessarily what people want to do on vacation, like set your alarm for 6 a.m. and wake up for sunrise, I really, really think that it is worth it. You'll be, one of a handful of people on the bridge in the morning. It'll be a completely different experience than in a couple hours when it's like absolutely mobbed. And it's just the most amazing view of the cityscape. Like if you've seen pictures of Prague, you know that it's known as the city of 100 spires for a reason because it's just surrounded by, old churches and bell towers, and just watching the sun from the bridge come up over that cityscape is breathtaking. And just kind of feeling like, the whole city is yours and you can wander through the old town and the lesser town, which is connected by the bridge right after. And just the city in the morning has a completely different charm. So I personally think that's an amazing way to start any itinerary in Prague. And I always take my friends to at least one sunrise while they're here. So I'm like the one dragging everyone out of bed at 5 a.m. or something.
Yeah,
But
some things are worth waking up early for,
exactly.
though.
Exactly. I mean, we were there 2 weeks ago for sunrise and we saw a double rainbow on the bridge at like 6
Wow.
a.m. So you never know what you're going to get.
Sounds
It
gorgeous.
was amazing. But yeah, from there, so check off your sunrise. My second thing on the list would be sunset. I'm like big on views. That's, number one on my itinerary for any place I go is like best viewpoints in the city. So I always pick my sunrise and my sunset spot. And for me, sunset in Prague has to be at the river at least once. So I highly recommend getting on a Vltava river cruise. My favorite is the wine boat, which is a cruise where you can also sample Czech wines while you're like cruising down the river at sunset. Looking at the city from the water is like a completely different perspective of it. So that's just it. I take almost every guest that I have on it, and they always say it's like highlight of their trip. So highly recommend. And then seeing the lights come on, the sun goes down and then the city just like illuminated by the lights, and the Prague Castle is all lit up on the hill above the city. And it's just a really, really incredible experience. And most of those boat tours happen year round. So during the winter, they're enclosed and you can be inside and drink like old wine or cider and have kind of like the holiday spirit going. So definitely should, no matter when you're coming, like don't think it's only, a summer activity or something like that. There's always boat cruises available. And then my last thing on the list would just honestly be wandering through the historic center. So as I mentioned in the beginning, the old town and the lesser town are just straight out of a fairy tale. I've actually seen very few cities in Europe that rival Prague's architecture. It's known to be one of the most well-preserved medieval cities, and the Czech Republic has a lot of really well-preserved medieval cities. But it like you could spend the entire day just wandering through. You'll always find a street or an alley or like a little nook or corner that's not featured on any guide or that's not part of any other, itinerary that you've seen. There's always surprises. They're all different and have their own character. Every building is a different color, a different style. They're all preserved as they were. And there's like, a ton of little cafes and terraces and cute little places to like sit and just have a drink or a coffee all scattered throughout the old town and the lesser town. And if you're big on like the photo ops, which I'm like always clicking, you'll never run out of spots walking through those neighborhoods. So it's really a very easy place to get lost. And I definitely recommend always factoring time into your itinerary to just walk through those neighborhoods because you'll probably end up spending like double the amount of time that you accounted for.
Yeah, I think that's a great tip because it really does kind of feel like you're wandering through a fairy tale there. I've only been to Prague for a very short time. We talked about this a little bit before the episode. Mira and I discussed how it was my first time solo in Europe and one of my very first solo cities. So I was very kind of timid and held back a lot. And I feel like I didn't get the true Prague
Yeah.
experience. And I really want to go back because I know how much people love Prague and how people rave about it the way that you are now. And one of the things that when I was there for my very short, I don't know, 2 or 3 night stint was to see the astronomical clock in the
Yes.
Old Town Square. Can you tell us what the significance of that clock is?
Yes, so it's actually one of the oldest functioning astronomical clocks in the world. So every hour on the hour, the clock, there's basically a show that happens at the clock. The apostles like shoot out of the clock, and there's a skeleton that's hanging from a rope on the end who pulls the lever and starts the show at the hour change. So every hour, like hundreds of people gather at the base of the clock to watch it. And I mean, it's been happening for hundreds of years. So it's just and, like, I don't know, it's an insane reality to know how old this engineering is and, like, that it could even be, thought about and designed, and it's grand, like, the face of the clock is stunning, it's beautiful, I don't even know like, we don't make things that beautiful anymore, it's just amazingly decorated and designed, and it's right in the middle of the Old Town Square, which is the central square of Prague. Not only are you looking at this amazing monument, but you're surrounded by, like, the most incredible architecture that the city has to offer. It's a mix of, like, Baroque architecture and Gothic architecture and Renaissance architecture all in one square, all different color buildings. It's surrounded by patios and terraces as well. So just being even if you're not, amazed by the clock, which I would understand, but even if that's not what you're going there for, you're going to enjoy the experience of just being in the old town square and experiencing the energy of it too. But yeah, it's an incredible feat of engineering, and it's definitely along with the Charles Bridge and the castle, like icon of Prague.
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember just being like, why does everyone keep talking about this clock? And then when I saw it, I was like, okay, I get it now. Like I
Yeah,
sat there drinking Aperol spritzes at a cafe across from it
yeah,
for hours just to watch it keep going. It was
crazy.
so, so cool. Yeah, I really enjoyed my time there. So thank you for telling us a little bit more about the history of that too. And I want to ask, like, if you had your best friend come in to visit you and you had to go to your personal top 3 attractions in Prague, what would those be?
Definitely. It's a really good question. So I think, like, top of my list for sure is Vyšehrad, which is the second largest castle in Prague. And kind of weird to call it a hidden gem because it's the second largest castle. And it definitely is a pretty big landmark when it comes to, things to check off in the city. But even so, I mean, no matter when you go, and I think I've been in every season, you will only be one of like 100 people walking around the grounds. And that's because it's like it's tucked away in Prague too. So it's outside of the historic center. It's right past a really beautiful neighborhood called Hardy, which should definitely also be on your itinerary. And it's really, peaceful and quiet. It's perched up on these cliffs and it overlooks the city. You can see the Prague Castle across the river from it. And it feels like no one knows about this place when you're there, even though, second largest castle in Prague. It's got just stunning grounds, a little bit of a vineyard that was left over from when it was part of the larger royal vineyards, a beautiful chapel in the center of the ground. And then it actually has like underground mazes that you can walk through as well. So you can get tours to kind of go under the castle and walk through the galleries and exhibits that are underneath the castle grounds. So that I just think the views from there are amazing, the peacefulness, like just that feeling of like, I don't know, you're in the middle of the city, you're in this massive Gothic medieval castle, and you feel like you're the only one there. I think it's a really special experience. And then, of course, it's just so close to Vino Hardy, as I mentioned earlier. It's a cool neighborhood because it's a mix of, I think, tourists and visitors who are there short term, but then locals as well. A lot of locals live in the neighborhood. A lot of people who have moved to Prague from other neighboring countries and other places around the world live in this neighborhood. So it's really diverse, and you'll have a ton of cafes and brunch spots. I love brunch. So there's like a ton of great brunch spots around the neighborhood. So spending the morning in the castle and then walking through the neighborhood to just find a little cafe to park yourself at. There's tons of plazas in the neighborhood that you can sit at and people watch. In the summer, there's farmers markets that happen. And just the architecture of the neighborhood is beautiful because it's very like Art Nouveau-esque and colorful. Like every building is a different color. So I think just combining those two things makes for such a great day, and just a breath too, because the historic center can be really crowded, even though it's gorgeous. It's obviously where everyone's hanging out. So just getting outside of it for a little bit, beating the crowds, being able to just like slow the pace down and take it in it's really amazing. So that's definitely, you know, where I'm taking anyone who visits me. So if you want to go, come.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm sold. I would love to come visit you and have you as my guide.
Please, please. Yeah, anyone listening, please like hit me up when you're here. But yeah, other than that, I'm also a huge beer garden and vineyard fan. So the city is actually considered to be one of the greenest cities in Europe, which I believe. And anyone who walks around would believe, like, no matter what area of the city, any neighborhood, you're like never far from a park, a beer garden, a vineyard, a plaza with a ton of beautiful flowers and, greenery. It's just everywhere. So anytime I have someone visiting, I'll be sure to take them to at least one or two of those parks or gardens. For me, my favorite beer garden would be Letna Beer Garden, which is on the opposite. So if you're staying in the old town, it's on the opposite side of the river. It's above Lesser Town. And it just has an amazing view of the old town from there. It's a great sunset spot. It's full of picnic tables, like under this canopy of trees. You can bring your own food and kind of just hang out and chill and get beer from the stand. There's also like snacks and stuff up there too. But just an amazing vibe and like a really good mix of visitors and locals, and just, everyone is hanging out and getting along. And it's a really just chill experience up there. But other than that, my other favorite beer garden would be Rogrovi Sadie, which is inside. It's inside the park that's called Rogrovi Sadie, actually. And it's kind of perched up on a hill. And it's an amazing sunset spot as well. It's in Vino Hardy, and it kind of is like a community hub for sunset. Like, no matter what season you come in, people always gather on that hill to watch the sunset and bring their blankets and sit out. During the summer, they'll have movie screenings. In the fall, there's pop-up secondhand markets and stuff. And then the beer garden, which is the biggest beer garden in the city, is kind of tucked away past the hill, also under trees and kind of shaded too. And they screen, soccer matches and other sports games, hockey in the winter, because hockey is a big thing here. And so it's just also a really great community feeling. And if you want to feel like you're getting a little bit of like what the local vibe might be here, I think those two places are really great to kind of hang out and just, this is what people do at the end of the day. They sit and drink beer and look at the great views, and just, yeah, there's always something to do. But yeah, other than that, tons of vineyards as well. So there's the vineyard that's like right underneath the castle, part of the Royal Vineyard at Villa Richter and St. Václav's. There's tons of vineyards all over the city, which for me was a really great surprise because I do love beer and beer is great, but I'd always prefer a glass of wine. And I think that the Czech Republic really does have a reputation for beer, and it's accurate because it's the largest consumer of beer in the world. And they, obviously claim to fame Pilsners, Budweisers, all of these amazing beer brands. But you never really hear about the Czech wine scene, which is amazing. A lot of it comes from the southern region, Moravia, but Prague has a ton of vineyards as well. And a lot of them were part of like the Royal Vineyard Network and still are existing in like the castle grounds. And then in Vino Hardy, which was the neighborhood of the Royal Vineyards, there's a lot of preserved areas of the vineyards as well. And you'll find a lot of wine shops. And so I definitely like to take my friends who are visiting to experience these vineyards, especially in the summer or in September when the harvest festivals are happening. So between September and onto November, I believe, the Czech Republic has like all of these harvest wine festivals because they're able to sell the really young grapes of the year. So a lot of the major vineyards will open up. You'll be able to walk through all of the vineyard, but the vines and stuff that you are not normally allowed to walk through. And they'll have wine tastings where you can come and get your glass and your tokens and try all of the newer wines. And it's just a really lovely experience. So that's definitely on my list for folks. And then,
That's awesome. I
yeah,
love that you mentioned that too, because you're right. Like when a place becomes known for something like the Czech Republic for beer,
yeah,
it's so easy for that one thing to overshadow every other product that you guys might, you
totally.
know, be masters in making wine, like you said. So that's so cool. That sounds so fun to go to one of those wine
Oh my
festivals
gosh.
too.
It's just like, that's my ideal day when I know there's a wine festival happening and I can wake up and go to brunch and go to a wine festival. I'm like the dream. Yes. And so I would definitely recommend if you're planning a trip, there's at least like one happening a month, at least from June to September. And actually November, there's a few too. So I
Very
would
cool.
say, yeah, I would say like look at the calendar, check out what's happening and when, and 100% worth planning a trip around one of these festivals. Really, really highly recommended. Such a lovely day. But yeah, I think last on my list is actually not necessarily a Prague item, but I do feel like it's worth saying because it's always something I try to do with people who are visiting, at least for, 5 days or so, is take them outside of the city. Because I think, being such a small country, people really tend to think it's just Prague. Like, what else? What else would you do here? And that's just so, it's not true. The Czech Republic actually has the most castles in the world, and there are a ton surrounding the city. And then there's also these beautiful small towns that are just within 1 or 2 hours. So my two favorite are Karlovy Vary and Český Krumlov. And Karlovy Vary is about an hour and a half, hour 45 outside of the city. Český Krumlov's about 2, and they're really well connected. You can get there by bus, by train, you can rent a car, and it's just both of them. And there's a ton of others too that I won't go through all of them now, but those are my main two if you're coming. It's just 100% worth it to take a trip outside of the city and see a different area of the country and just like, you breathe a little bit outside of like that capital city air where it can get really overwhelming and you're just like, there's so much to do, there's so much to see. I'm very overstimulated. And getting into one of these smaller towns is just such a great change of pace from that. And really, I think opens your eyes to how much the country has to offer. Cause I really learned a lot by leaving the capital city. I think when I first moved here too, I didn't think much about, what else is there to do besides go to Prague. And now that I've really started to explore all of the small towns that are surrounding the city, I'm like, always have one coming up on my list that I want to hit. So definitely worth planning enough time in the city to be able to leave the capital. I think you won't
Yeah,
regret.
day trips are such a great way to get a more well-rounded view of a country. So I'm glad you mentioned that. And we'll definitely talk about, like you said, ways to get around a little bit later in the episode. Quickly, I wanted to touch on how Prague is one of the biggest, well, I guess it's not bachelor, bachelorette there, stag and hen, right? Stag and hen
You
destinations
regret.
where
100%.
people come to have these like crazy parties before their weddings. Isn't that right?
That is so true. And no matter when you come, you will always find at least, I don't know, 5 to 10 groups of stag parties walking around, all in their costumes or whatever their get-ups are for the trip is. And you will hear that. If you don't see them, you will hear them for sure. So definitely something that happens here. But I will say it's something that the city is actually cracking down on. So I say that you'll see and hear them now, but I don't know. If you're coming in a year or
Who
two, maybe
knows?
you won't. Yeah.
Yeah, because actually, Nate and I talked about in an earlier episode, I think at the very beginning of this year, how they implemented no longer having bar crawls.
Yeah.
Yeah, which, technically you could just make your own bar crawl, but it was something like you couldn't, you could no longer in Prague go on a guided bar crawl because
No.
of how they were kind of disturbing the locals so much.
No, it's so true. And we'll talk about this a little bit later too in the etiquette section of it, but the Czechs are very serious about their quiet hours. And it's like it's not a joke at all. You do not want to mess with the quiet hours. So I don't know how long these parties are gonna last because like you said, bar crawls already banned. Right now, actually, and it's already started to happen in certain areas of the city. They're banning like the Lime scooters that people ride around on
Yeah.
because people were just like really drunk and riding around on scooters on these old cobblestone streets where it's like, that's a recipe for disaster.
The worst combination.
No, like and you see them, right? Their entire bodies are like shaking on the scooter. You're like, there's no way you're enjoying that experience right now. So that is currently on the hit list. So yeah, I don't know how long the stag and hen parties are gonna last, but yeah, I think it's on the to do.
Yeah, for sure. Oh my god, that's so funny that they had why would they even introduce the Lime scooters there? That sounds like a horrible idea, but
I'm like, yeah, someone
uh,
really did not think this through at all.
well, now I wanna switch gears. We've talked about this already. You've discussed a few of your favorite neighborhoods and areas to
Yeah.
check out. So I wanna talk about logistics. Where should a first-timer stay in Prague?
If it's your first time in Prague, I 100% recommend staying in the historic center. So that's the old town or the lesser town. And even though you're probably going to spend a little bit more on accommodation because it is a pricier area of the city, it is the best place to be close to the action, walking distance from all of the main attractions, walking distance from bars and restaurants and cafes, but also really well connected to the outside of the center. So from the old town, you'll be able to catch trams, metros, buses really easily. I think the lesser town is a little bit less connected. And I say little bit, like very little bit less connected just because the architecture of the lesser town is just harder to get the trams onto. So there's a few main tram lines that run through it, but the lesser town's a lot more like really narrow cobblestone alleys and things like that. So you have a few less tram lines, but no matter where you need to go, you'll be able to get there from the historic center. I think it's also just a really good place to get a true feel of Prague. So like in terms of the charm, like you hear medieval, historic, fairy tale, all of these adjectives used to describe the city. Those two neighborhoods are going to check every single one of those boxes. I think the only difference I would say between choosing one or the other, I think the Old Town is a little bit more lively and energetic. So I think if you're looking for the action, if you're looking to go out, you might want to be in the Old Town. You'll also find probably a little bit more spacious accommodation. So if you're with a group, you're with the family, you might want to look in the Old Town. The lesser town is a little bit more, I think, just romantic. Like, I think it's like a couple's getaway kind of neighborhood. You have more luxury accommodation, you have more fine dining options in the lesser town. So if you're really looking to like splurge or just have like a romantic getaway or you're just traveling with your partner or something, I think the lesser town that might be the choice for you. But yeah, between those two, you can't go wrong.
Very good to know. And what about for travelers on a budget? Do you have any specific hostels or hotels, maybe
Yeah.
some more value neighborhoods that people should stay?
Definitely. So I will start off by saying that even though the historic center, the old town and the lesser town are pricey, you're going to find, the best of Prague's hotels there. There are tons of budget friendly hostels in that neighborhood too. I think they're going to be smaller and more cramped. So if you're looking for budget friendly, but also you want a little bit of space, you might not want to stay in those hostels. They're also usually in like the louder areas of the center as well. But if you really want to be in the center, in the historic center, and you're also looking for a hostel stay or something similar, you can find it easily. However, I would personally say if you're looking for more of a well-rounded budget-friendly trip, so not just accommodation, but you're looking for more budget-friendly and food and bars, and you want to be able to take advantage of free activities like the parks and stuff, you probably want to look outside the center. So I'd recommend Holsovice, which is around Prague 7. So all of the neighborhoods and districts have numbers, and Prague 1 would be the center. But also Beach is amazing. Like, it's a more local neighborhood, but it has got a ton of really great, digital nomad type hostels, great workspaces. If you're working and traveling, you'll find great cafes that you can park yourself at during the day. Tons of secondhand stores to explore. It's very like industrial art galleries type of thing, but also parks. So one of my favorite parks, Dramovka, is up in Holsovice in Prague 7, and you could spend the entire day there. It's absolutely beautiful every season. I was just there looking at all of like the changing fall foliage now. And I think that neighborhood overall is just a great way to travel Prague on a budget and then be able to be really well connected to the center. So you can hop on a tram from Prague 7 and be in the center in 20 minutes. direct lines, super easy. But yeah, I think, Vino Hardy I talked about earlier too when I was mentioning Vishrad. And I think that also is a great neighborhood. I think it's better for longer stays. It's more geared towards apartment rentals. So I think you can find places that you could stay for a month or two. But there's a few really great hostels in the neighborhood too. And again, tons of parks and like beer gardens and vineyards and lower cost activities. When I first came to the city, also as a solo traveler for a weekend, I stayed in a hostel here. And since then, I've recommended it to a lot of people. It's called the Czech Inn, and it's really well connected to the center. It's spacious. It's really great for like, socializing and meeting new people. And it's in Vino Hardy. So, tons of activities really close by and also just like walking around the neighborhood is stunning. So yeah, I think those would be my recommendations for more budget friendly.
Yeah, that's definitely very different from the hostel I stayed in. I don't even remember what it was or even where it was because I was not very good at documenting my trip at this time, but I was in
Mhm.
a 30-person room,
Oh my,
and so it was just bunk beds on bunk beds on bunk beds. It was between, like, $9 and $12 a night, so I was really on a budget,
yeah, for
and I
that.
learned my lesson. I actually wrote an article, it was kind of, like, inspired by that experience on, like, what I wish I'd known before solo traveling in Europe because I was so, like, just I was so focused on putting my budget first that I didn't really consider how maybe if I spent, 10 extra dollars
Yeah.
a night, I'd have a way better experience. And I just remember being like, "Oh my god, I cannot sleep in this hostel with all these people in here," and it was so loud. So that's just a side note that, maybe splurge a little more than $9 a night.
And you know what? I totally feel you too. Because when I was first backpacking after college, like, I don't know, even $5 more for a room, it feels like so much,
It's like
I'm
a
like,
world of difference
yes.
sometimes.
So
Yeah.
now I'm thinking, I'm like, oh, I should have splurged for like, the $20 room.
Yeah,
But
splurge.
yeah,
Yeah,
at the moment, I
exactly.
was like, heck no, like I'm not spending an extra $10 on my room. So it's so true.
Yeah, yeah, definitely check out reviews too and all that. Well, thank you so much for sharing all those budget tips. And now, as with any major city, it helps to know what to watch out for. So, what are some top safety tips that you have for visitors in Prague?
Prague is one of the safest cities I've been to, and it consistently ranks among safest cities for tourists in the world. And you'll feel it when you're here. I was previously living in Madrid before this, and I love Madrid. I love the city, but I definitely will say like there's a lot to watch out for while you're walking around, especially at night. And I felt it. And I will never say like, don't be on guard here. Don't look out for things because there is petty theft, especially in the more center areas where you're with a lot of tourists and it's really crowded and you're brushing up against people. So definitely have your belongings close by in those areas. But in terms of safety at night, walking home by yourself, especially, as a woman too, walking around in the city, and a lot of solo travelers are here by themselves, you'll feel pretty safe. And I say that even, outside of the center of the city too, there's always public transportation running. It runs less frequently at night, but you'll have ways to get home, whether it be tram, metro, or bus. It's pretty safe to walk with, obvious precautions and stuff. But the city's well lit. It's really clean, and you will just I personally, I've felt really safe while I've been here, and I think most travelers would feel that way too.
Good. That's great to hear, especially if people are traveling, like you said, alone or with little ones as a
Yeah.
family. It's consistently ranked such a safe city, which is awesome.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
you just touched on this. You've mentioned several times how it's really walkable in Prague, but I know that there's also some really great transportation systems. So, what are the best ways to get around the city?
Yeah, for sure. And I think that, yeah, as I said, contributes to the accessibility of the city, the safety of the city, all of it. It's just the public transportation is super comprehensive. There are, I don't know, like 40 tram lines or something like that. There's three really main metro lines, and then there's hundreds of buses that run. So all of them are interconnected and work together. You buy a ticket to one, you get access to all of them. So you can hop on, hop off, kind of combine your routes to have tram, have metro, whatever else you need. And you can get through basically any part of the city and actually outside of the city as well to some of the smaller towns right around the outskirts of the city on the public transportation. So I definitely recommend, and I know this can kind of be like, you're coming for such a short time and you're like, oh, I don't want to learn the whole public transportation system. I'll just Uber or Bolt or something like that. But I think it's worth it. to use the public transportation here in Prague, and I recommend that everyone try it. It's very easy. You can download an app on your phone and buy the ticket right on your phone. You can buy them directly inside trams or metros. But I will say that I think the biggest mistake that tourists make and why they get fined on the public transportation is because they don't activate their tickets. And that's something I learned very early on here. So, and it's the same in a few other, I think if you've traveled to Germany or something, you might have seen the similar system. But buying your ticket isn't enough for it to be valid when you get onto any of the public transportation. If you have it on your phone and you've bought it on the PID app, you have to then click it and press activate after you've bought it, and it counts down from a minute. So if you are like, just getting onto the tram and you activate it and they're checking tickets, it's not going to be valid yet. So you have to activate it at least a minute before you get on. If you get a printed ticket from any of the ticket stands outside of the trams or metros, you have to then stick it into these yellow boxes that you'll see right at the entrance, and they'll stamp it to say that your ticket's now been validated and it's active. So that's a big thing that I think a lot of tourists forget. They're like, I have my ticket right here. And then, someone will come to scan it and it's not valid yet. So that's something to watch out for. But yeah, it's very affordable. So if you plan on using it a lot and you're only there for a week or two, it might actually be worth it to buy the month pass and just use your transportation as much as you want while you're there. But yeah, and then, on top of that, as you just mentioned too, you can walk. It's a really walkable city, and it's a beautiful city to walk around. Walking is like half of the activity itself, just looking around and taking in all of the different buildings and architecture and plazas and people watching. It's a very easy city to walk. I think one thing to take into account though is accessibility with walking. So it's a great city to walk. I recommend walking, but it's cobblestone. It's mostly cobblestone, especially in the historic neighborhoods. So if you are traveling with a wheelchair or a stroller for younger ones, those areas might be places that you struggle in, and you might look to use more of the public transportation, which has great accessibility. But that is something I would know is like that cobblestone can be tricky. I know I mentioned it with the scooters before. And if you're packing, like, leave the heels behind. Don't bring them. I've been here for 3 years. I think I've worn my heels like twice going out because it's better to just be in sneakers and be comfortable while you're walking than be like, break an ankle or something.
Right. It's not worth it at that point. Well, now let's talk about the best part, which is the food.
Yes.
So Czech cuisine doesn't always really get the spotlight it deserves, I wouldn't say. At least there's very few dishes I even know about. So what should travelers try during their visit to Prague?
Yeah, that is a good question. And you're right. I don't think it gets, the attention it deserves because it's always the beer, which is worth it. And I
Right.
think, if you're coming, like, do a beer tour, get your breweries in for sure. But Czech cuisine is, a thing of its own and definitely worth exploring. There's a lot of great food tours in the city that'll give you kind of the overview of it. But I think one main dish to check off. So, I mean, most people would probably think it's goulash because that just comes to mind.
That's the only one what I was referring to.
Yeah.
It's like really all I know of.
Yep. And I think a lot of Czech people will immediately be like, no, it's not Czech. Like, and I get it. So I think what you should really try, have a goulash if you want to have a goulash. Every restaurant will have a goulash. But if you want a really authentic Czech dish to check off, then it's called svičkova. And it is basically like a slab of beef sirloin in a vegetable sauce, and it's got bread dumplings on the side and kind of a cranberry topping and cream. So it's basically like Thanksgiving on a plate. And
Sounds good.
yes, and it is like far more, authentic and Czech than the goulash will be most likely, and it's amazing. So I think that's definitely something to try off. It's a really meat-heavy cuisine, so I'm giving you all of these recommendations, and I will preface it by saying that I'm actually vegetarian, so I don't eat them myself. But there's a lot of
Good to know.
yes. My boyfriend is like a carnivore though, so I have, his
His insight.
yes, his insight, his word that all of these recommendations are good, and I also have my favorite like vegan spots here that veganize all of these Czech dishes for me.
Okay, great. Yeah,
Um,
we want to hear them all.
Yes, but I will say, like, that's something I think to be a little bit weary of. If you're a really big foodie and you're traveling for the food, just know that, it's super meat heavy here. Like, all of the main Czech dishes are really meat heavy. I think every time I go to a restaurant and I look at the vegetarian section, it's like fried cheese which is and it's good, but like you can only eat so much fried cheese if that's what you're eating here. And like there's a lot of like cabbage and pickled the vegetables. They're really big on the pickled vegetables here as well. So you'll find a ton of those options on the menu, but definitely geared towards the meat eaters. So in addition to, that main dish, Czech sausages are huge. And you'll find a lot of great like local Czech pubs that have like sausage tastings with their beers and stuff. Pork knuckle is also a really big dish here as well. So in the old town, there's a lot of really great places that specialize in pork knuckle. So I think if you're looking for one of my favorites, which I will recommend because they have a lot of good vegetarian dishes and it's a great view. It's up near the castle. It's called Kuchin and it's a really great place to try local Czech dishes. And then also just like have a beer out on the terrace and look over the lesser town too. But those are definitely some main Czech dishes. And then I think for something sweet after, there's a dessert called kolache, which is a pastry and it's kind of like a bread crumble. And it can have different fillings. So a really classic filling is like sour cherry, and they are amazing. It's so delicious. I highly recommend trying one here. I think a lot of people, especially if you're coming for the Christmas markets, will try the chimney cakes that you'll see at the markets with the ice cream on top. A lot of times they're like lined in chocolate and topped with whipped cream. But again, similar to the goulash, a lot of Czech people will tell you they're not actually Czech and they're Hungarian or something. So I would say like get your chimney cake fix if you need it, and then try a kolache too, because it'll probably be one of the best pastries you try here. And during the summer, there's actually a restaurant up in Vino Hardy called Kus Kolache, and it makes a soft serve of this pastry. So it's kind of like a soft serve vanilla ice cream and the pastry tumbled up with crumbs on top with the filling on the top. So good. It's amazing.
Sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I want to go just to try that.
It's really, yeah. And I'm honestly not like a huge pastry person, but this one I love. And I have it on, the record from people who I've sent to these bakeries too, that they were like, wow, that was way better than I expected. So definitely give it a try. And then, yeah, beer and wine scene for sure. You can't miss the beer and wine scene. You got to get your Pilsner, you got to get your Budweiser, Staropramen, Kozel, all of the classic Czech beers.
I was just reading the
Yeah.
milk beers thing.
Oh,
So I don't know if you want to
yes.
mention that really fast.
Yeah. So it's called a mleko, and it's basically an entire mug, like a beer mug, of foam. So it's like this much beer at the bottom of the mug, and then just beer foam on top. And it's
Really?
yes,
I've
it's
never heard of this.
it's crazy. I never heard about it either, and I was like, "There's no way this is good. Like, what? What you're paying for beer foam?" But it's, like, really thick and sweet and milky almost, so that's why it's called milk beer, and it's really good. Like, I swear, like, don't knock it till you try it. It's a very strange concept to me to go get a beer and then pay for an entire glass of foam, essentially, but it's really good. I don't know what's in the beer foam here, but it's quality beer foam.
Sounds very interesting.
Yeah.
I would have to try that to believe that it's good because it
Yeah.
sounds just so
It
random.
is,
I
like,
believe you. I believe you.
try it to
Yeah.
believe it kinda thing, and then once you
Yeah.
have it, you go and tell the whole world that it's the best thing you've had.
Very cool. Well, are there any local etiquette tips visitors should know before going to Prague?
Yeah, so I definitely think that the culture as a whole, a lot of people will probably think, the Czechs are quite quiet and subdued, and, that's true. I will say they don't misread it as, passive aggressive or rude. I think I made the mistake of that coming here, and I was like, coming from the US where we're very like, hi, how are you? Like, yeah, hugging each other in the streets and stuff. I was like, oh gosh, like, what is going on here? But they're lovely. They're lovely. They're kind. They will go out of their way to help you out. But the concept of, personal space and being quiet and respectful in public are huge. So I think that is something, especially as an American traveler, I try to be really cautious of, and that's anywhere, but specifically the Czech culture really takes that very seriously. It's like, on the trams, on the metros, you keep your space. You're not like pressed up against each other. You're not like a New York metro, where you're like subway, I guess I should say.
Right.
Where you're like shoulder to shoulder pressed up against the door with someone. Like they're not about that here. Talking really loudly in public spaces or on public transportation at cafes. Absolutely not. Like you keep it quiet, you keep it simple. You spark, a conversation with the person next to you, not the person one table down from you. But as long as you are respectful of that and cautious of that, you'll find that people are really kind. They're just quieter. But I'll also say, on top of that, even though I'm saying all of this and I'm saying like, keep your space, don't make too much noise, they're really big on greetings. So it is considered quite rude to not say hello and goodbye when you walk in and out of a store, a restaurant, even like, I was at the doctor's office last week and just the waiting room. Like people come in, say hello to the whole waiting room, and then sit down and kind of do their own thing. People come out of the doctor's office, say goodbye to the whole waiting room, and then leave. And like there's no conversation in between. Like I said, like they're not, chatting each other up, saying like, what are your weekend plans or something. But the hello and goodbye, huge, always. Thank you, always. So those kind of greetings and like general manners are really important. And people will look at you kind of weird if you don't say hello and goodbye when you walk in and out of places. So that's definitely something to be aware of. And I think just general, good traveler rules is learning hello, goodbye, and thank you when you're traveling. I think it really makes a good impression on a lot of people. It really makes people warm up to you quite fast to hear you say hello in their language and say goodbye in their language. And I think for Czech people specifically, you'll find that they love that. They'll be like super kind and welcoming, and like they hear you say hello to them or ahoy or dobry den, something. They're just like, hi, nice to meet you. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
definitely a way to like break that ice. And
Yeah, I wanted to ask how do you say hello and goodbye then?
yeah, so actually,
We just
hello
said it,
and
but
goodbye is just ahoy, like
oh,
yeah.
ahoy?
You know,
Okay.
I know.
That's easy to remember.
So that's easy. But then, you could say Dobry den, which is good day. When you are leaving this place, you could say Nashledanu, which is like a formal goodbye. So I just mentioning like the doctor's waiting rooms. Like if you're walking out of one of those, you're gonna say like Nashledanu to everyone in the room. And they'll all say it back to you too, even though you had no
That's so
conversation
cute.
before that at all. It's really
I love that. That's adorable.
so that's big, but yeah, and then I think the last thing, and this kind of goes to the first thing I was saying about just, being really cautious about volume and personal space. Quiet hours in the city are very serious. So after 10 p.m., there are like city imposed quiet hours, which I think a lot of people don't realize because as we were mentioning earlier, it's a huge party city and it's huge with the bachelorette parties and the bachelor parties and stag and hen parties and all of that. But people are very serious about their quiet hours, especially if you're outside of the main center city where like most of the clubs and bars are. So if you're in a more residential neighborhood like Bina Hardy or Holsavice, as I was mentioning earlier, you'll get weird looks if you are in the street speaking really loudly after 10 p.m. All of the terraces and restaurant like outdoor seating areas close at 10. They won't serve you outside. You can, go outside to like stand and have a drink or some people will take like a smoke break outside or something, but the volume has got to stay low. The waiters and waitresses will tell you that too. Like if you're going outside, they're gonna be like, okay, keep it quiet. So like,
Mhm.
nobody comes and says anything to us or something like that. So definitely something to be cautious of is after 10, like keep it quiet and no one will have a problem.
So is it like 10 PM to what, like 8 AM?
Yeah, I would say, like, honestly, earlier because people
Yeah.
really get, like, I would say right after sunrise, which I've been around a few sunrises now, and like, honestly, like 30 minutes after the city's buzzing. Like,
Really? Okay,
yeah,
so it's early society.
it's early.
Gotcha.
They're out early and they're in bed early. And I think a lot of it is the weather since it gets quite cold and it gets dark really early. So right now, it's mid-November, it's dark at 4. So like sometimes I have to kind of motivate myself. I'm like,
Gotcha.
the day is over. And I'm like, no, it's 4 p.m. and I still have things to do. But I think
Yeah.
because of that, they're up, they're taking advantage of the daylight, and then by evening it's quiet and everyone's inside drinking
Gotcha.
cider.
Gotcha. Do you have any other specific tips to share about visiting Prague?
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely say so I've already mentioned, like, the use of the public transportation and the apps for that and how easy it is. I think and on top of that, if you're staying for a long enough time or if you're just one of those people that really likes to check off, like, those main attractions and museums, say consider checking out the Prague Visitors Pass. It is you can buy different levels of it, and it's kind of like an all-inclusive pass to almost every attraction you'd wanna see, museums, the main monuments and the castle, the Jewish quarter, the synagogues, all of it. And I think if I haven't done all the math, but if you do all the math of what you want to see and separate admissions, which can really add up, and I think it is a budget friendly city, but the thing that really gets you is paying for admissions to see things you want to see. Yeah, I think this pass is a really great way around it and will actually encourage you to see things that you might not have had on your itinerary before. And it includes things that you're like, oh, whoa, I didn't even realize this was an attraction and I'm going to go see it because it's in my pass. So I think the Prague Visitors Pass is definitely worth it for certain types of travelers and people. Um,
And do you just find that, like, on the official Prague
yeah,
website?
yeah. So the
Okay,
Prague tourism website, super English friendly, really easy to
nice.
navigate, has all of the visitors pass information, and then also an events calendar. So I was mentioning the wine festivals, the farmers markets that happen on the weekend. You can find all of that on the tourism website,
Perfect,
prague.eu.
yeah.
Yeah.
We'll link that in the
Yes.
show notes for listeners who wanna check it out.
Please do. I am on that site, like, every single day, and I'm not a visitor, like, I lived here for, like, I'm going on 3 years, and I'm still on that site all of the time. It is so helpful. Best bars, restaurants linked there, so I definitely recommend checking that out.
So with the mention of all these bars and restaurants, is tipping customary in Prague?
Yeah, so actually, I made a note of that to speak about because that was kinda new for me. So as I mentioned, I was living in Madrid before this, and tipping had kinda just become a thing, but it still wasn't really, mandatory or like, you didn't it wasn't like at home where you're gonna get weird looks if you don't tip. It's, like, instilled in the culture. So when I got here, I was like, "All right, what is it? Like, is it a yes? Is it a no? How do you go about it?" And I would definitely say that it's becoming more and more of a thing here. And so I think that is something to be wary of as travelers, because a lot of the times when you're traveling through Europe, people say like, "Oh, it's not the same as home. Like it's no tip. Don't worry about it. Just like get up and leave." And I would say it's not necessarily true anymore, and I don't think it's going to be true in the future. So right now, it's getting pretty customary to tip anywhere between 5 and 10%, depending on where you're eating and what it's like a sit down service type of thing, but that's new here, and it's definitely something that's changing in the culture, and as the city also expands its tourism sector and stuff, like, it's getting a lot busier and bigger, and so I think that's something to be aware of when you're traveling too, because, yeah, you can kind of find yourself in an awkward situation where you, like, get up and walk away because you didn't think it was a thing, and people are like, "So?"
Yeah. No, that's good to know. I mean, hey, it's still not as much as it is in the States at
No,
around
no, it is
20%,
not
so
that, like, standard 20 yet, or, like, I think now it's, like, 25, but
it keeps getting crazier and crazier.
yeah, it's
Okay, so
spreading, it's definitely spreading.
yeah, alright, so tip 10-ish%. Good to know.
Yeah, so my last tip would definitely also, and, this kinda goes on the tipping note, is to keep some cash on you. You will be okay for the most part carrying your cards around. Most of the main attractions will allow you to use card for admission fees, but as I was mentioning earlier, there's always really great farmers markets, secondhand markets, design markets happening in the city, and if they're happening during your trip, 100% worth checking it out, and for those, you're gonna want some cash on hand. And even just like the really, casual pubs or food stalls and stands that you'll find around the center, you're going to want some cash on hand for those too. So I make a note of it because if you're doing a Euro trip, you might have taken out a bunch of Euros and they might be helpful in a lot like the center. A lot of places will accept Euro, but it is important to note that the Czech Republic doesn't use the Euro and it uses the Krona. So it is like if you're taking cash out, make sure that you're using the krona, you're taking out a few krona to keep on hand with you. There's a lot of places to exchange here or, take them directly out of the ATMs here. But definitely a note to make because I know a lot of people are, going to Vienna from here, coming from Germany where the euro is really easy and you're able to access it really easily or like transfer back home. But yeah, the corona is like that little dot on the map that you're gonna need something else for. So just keep a few on hand.
Perfect. Yeah, very good to know. Well, we're coming to the end of the episode. I wanna end with a very simple question of when is the best time to visit Prague?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I could spend a lot of time talking about it, and I won't because I think every month brings something different. But one of my favorite things about the city is that it's a year-round destination, and you might not think that because as I mentioned earlier, and like my first perceptions of the city were that it's dark, it's cold, and it's wintry, and you don't want to be here during that time. But it's just simply, it's true. The winter's cold and dark, and I'm not going to say it's not, but it shouldn't be a deterrent for you. I think every season really brings its own charm here. So I think it's up to you as a traveler to know what type of visit you want and to plan your trip around that. So I'd say if you're coming for the beer gardens, outdoor festivals, if you're wanting to spend all of your time along the river and, walking through vineyards, summer for you for sure. Make note though that it's really crowded, the prices are high, and it's very rare that you would be in a hotel or an apartment with air conditioning. A lot of them do not have air conditioning, and so it's good to note that, the hottest months, and they are getting hotter, can be quite uncomfortable here. If you're looking for, change of pace, less crowds, cooler temperatures, but specifically the wine festivals I mentioned and fall foliage, because the fall here is stunning, then I think like, September to November is fantastic. And then November and December, if you're going to come for the holiday markets, really amazing, like festive time of year. You'll forget that it's freezing and that you're wearing like 3 layers because the entire city is like decked out for the holidays. The markets are so much fun. There's pop-up ice rinks everywhere and, hot cider stands and stuff like that. So I think it's totally worth it to plan a winter trip. The only 2 months of the year I think that you might want to be a little weary about are January and February, just because the markets are over. It is winter and you will remember that you are cold and it's dark. But I'll say those are the best times to travel on a budget. You'll get really good rates. You'll be able to stay probably at a lot of like the more luxury hotels in the center city for better rates than you'd be able to stay at other times a year. And we actually have taken advantage of that sometimes. I've just been like, well, let's treat ourselves to like a January hotel stay that we wouldn't normally at any other point of year. So I'd say, if you're looking for that shoulder season, actually, I guess that's more really just off season. I think March is more of the shoulder here. But yeah, I think if you're looking for that budget trip, but really want to take advantage of low prices and no crowds, then be like January and February could be great for you. Just be aware that a lot of main attractions might have different hours or gardens might be closed, that kind of thing. You're also most likely to get snow, which I personally think shouldn't deter you if you're not, scared of snow or anything like that. But it's just beautiful. The city in the snow is absolutely beautiful. So yeah, I don't think it should be kind of like a scary, like, don't do it kind of thing. And then in the spring, I think it's the best time to come for the garden. So like all of the gardens across the city are in bloom. The vineyards open up. It's just so fresh and colorful. And that I say would be the shoulder season. And then you also have the Easter markets. So that either changes based on the Easter season, March or April each year, but they're really fun as well. A little less of a vibe and crowd than the holiday markets in November and December, but still like a really fun time to be around. So yeah, I mean, no matter what time you come, you're going to find something. It's just about what you want out of the trip.
The Christmas markets sound magical. I wish so badly that I could go, so maybe next year. With all that said, how much time is the ideal amount to truly get the Prague experience?
Yeah. I'd say 3 days minimum to make sure that you see the historic center, main attractions, and then get to venture out a little bit too. Because genuinely, like some of the other neighborhoods I've mentioned are my favorite parts of the city. So I think 3 days allows you to spend 2 days checking off the main sites and stuff, and then spend one day kind of in a different area of the city. But if you would like to take a day trip outside of the city, then I'd say 4 to 5. You're going to want that extra buffer to either get to a close by town outside of the city or, do some kind of excursion or even like one of those river cruises, something that takes out time of your day. You're going to want that extra time. But I mean, like I said in the beginning, if you stay for 2 weeks, if you stay for a month, like your itinerary is still going to be full and you're still going to have things on the list to do at the end. So no matter what, you're going to be okay. But that 3 to 5 day range is, for me, the minimum.
Perfect. Well, Meera, this has been such a great conversation, and I love how you've painted such a vivid picture of Prague. If you had to sum it up in just a few sentences, what's the ultimate reason someone should visit Prague?
Okay. It's really hard, but I think that the ultimate reason you should visit Prague is because no matter how you've pictured the city, it's going to change your perception when you're here. Like I said, it has this reputation of being really cold and really dark and like gloomy, but you're going to get here and you're going to be absolutely stunned at how colorful and lively and energetic the atmosphere is. And I think that in itself, just the fact that you're like, oh my gosh, this is nothing like I imagined it would be, is enough of a reason to come. And like you said, there's other perceptions that are like, it's a party city. It's where everyone's going on their bachelor parties. And also, you might think that, and then you're going to get here and you're like, wow, there are so many museums. There's so much history. There's so much culture. Like the Jewish Quarter is insane. I had no idea it existed here. And so, like, yeah, whatever your current perception is, whatever you think the city has to offer, it's going to shock you in some way or another. It is overflowing with things to do. It's overflowing with just like culture and energy. And yeah, I would sell it, forever. I'd talk about it forever if I could, and I just think that's really special to go to a place where you're like, no matter what you think, no matter what you thought, like, you're gonna find that challenged, you're gonna find something new, and you're gonna leave, like, thinking like, "Oh my gosh, next time I come, I have to check this out," or, "I didn't know that existed, and I have to check this out." Like, "Oh, I thought it was only about beer, and now I know about this same, like, crazy wine scene. I wanna go to Moravia so badly." Like, there's just always something that's left on the itinerary to do, and that will keep you wanting to come back and to experience a new part of it. So that's definitely what sells it for me, and I think what should sell it for anyone who's debating whether Prague belongs on the itinerary or not.
Absolutely. Well, I think you've done an excellent job of pitching this to our listeners and to me, and I'm so excited to give Prague another go because, again, my first visit just did not live up to any of what you've talked about, and I'm so excited to actually, like, experience it the way that you talk about it. Sounds so wonderful.
And I will say, like, my first visit didn't either because I did the same thing. I stayed in, a random hostel and I was by myself and I was scared. So, yeah, if that was your first visit, if you're listening and you're like, "Oh, yeah, I had that same," come back, please, and hit me up when you're here.
Absolutely. Oh, I love that. Well, before we go, remember to visit travellemming.com and type in Prague in the search bar to read all of Mira's new guides. And before you head to the website, if you enjoyed this episode, please like, subscribe, and leave a 5-star rating. Your support means the world to us. Mira, thank you again so much for sharing your Prague expertise. This was such a great discussion with you today.
Thank you so much.
And listeners, thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next time on the Travel Lemming podcast. Ahoy!